All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us this morning or this afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. My name is Dalen Walton. I'm an Agile Engagement Manager with Icon Agility Services, and I'm happy to welcome you to today's webinar. Today, we have Jenny Herald, who's the Chief Product Officer for Gtmhub, who's going to be giving us an overview of the Gtmhub OKR platform. And also we have Larry LaSalle from our side of the fence, who's a consultant and an expert in all things OKR. So we're going to be talking a little bit about the platform today. So any platform related questions, we're going to shunt to Jenny to answer. Any process oriented OKR questions, we're going to have Larry pick up on those. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Jenny and let her get started.
Hi everyone, I'm Jenny. Hopefully everyone can see my screen. I need a thumbs up if you're cool. Okay, so what we're going to discuss today is Gtmhub, the platform, as you've heard. And so this is live, no slides. We're going real here. When we're thinking about OKRs, we need to imagine that they're their superpowers, and some of those superpowers maybe include alignment. And so that's the first thing we're going to do. When you land into Gtmhub, you'll find yourself in the home, but I'm going to go into what we call sessions so that we can describe kind of the taxonomy of Gtmhub before we even launch into how you configure everything. So a lot of times when you're thinking about OKRs and what makes them awesome is that you can be working on OKRs over some time horizon. That's very common with goals, right? You want some time period. And the way that we define that time constraint in Gtmhub is what we call a session. And you can imagine in an organization, you might have these really strategic long-term goals that might be maybe 3 to 5 years in nature. Maybe you have, like more tangible strategic goals that would be defined in an annual session or an annual period. And then you would have a very tactical goal setting where teams are actively trying to affect change. And then they would do that maybe in a quarterly clip. And so when you create a time-bound period, you would call that a session. You can create them very easily in Gtmhub by clicking on this button. We'll look at, for example, Q4 2020. Once you create one, and we'll edit it here, you just give it a title. You give it some time frame. When are we going to start this OKR bounded period? When are we going to end it? And you have 3 statuses you can have. The first is open. So imagine like everyone can create, delete, or edit OKRs. This is the time period when everyone's brainstorming and putting their stuff in the system. And then once everyone is set, then you would lock this and you would put the session in progress, which means that you can only update key results at that point. You can't add any new ones. So whatever you agreed upon in the beginning, you can lock. You can leave a session open if you want. Sometimes we see customers do that, but most times you'll see people lock the session. And then once that time horizon is done, you would archive it and it no longer shows up in your sidebar. It's not an active session. No one's working on OKRs anymore. It's done. Other things you can do is you can give it colors, which will show why that's important. You can nest sessions. So in this case, this is a child. Q4 is a child to the annual session of 2020. And then you can provide a cadence. And this is very typical in your OKR methodology. At what frequency do you want the organization or teams to be able to update their key results? And you want that to be a fairly regular clip so that you would get signals from team members or individuals that own OKRs that they're doing good or they're in trouble, and you're able to negotiate how to help those individuals that, for example, have signaled that they're in trouble. We have something special called a workflow, and we'll show what this means, but effectively it is in this session. Can I make sure that all OKRs are good to go? The answer is yes. And they would push, if we enabled this, all OKRs through a workflow so that you can assign somebody as a reviewer, check out the OKR, and then say, we're good. And they would approve that OKR. And then from that point on, everything's good to go. And then as with most everything in Gtmhub, we have very granular level permission. So you can even imagine a universe where you might have research, test, and evaluation type projects or need to know sessions. You can customize the visibility or permission level for a session and say all of these individuals that own OKRs can be a part of this session and they would have access to it. And whoever needs access would be able to have that granted to them. And everyone who doesn't need to know, they don't need to know. So in a nutshell, sessions, time-bound periods where OKRs will be achieved. Now, why does that matter? we're going to actually click into, let's say, the Q4 2020 session. It matters in alignment. In Gtmhub, you're able to align OKRs not only according to some construct of I need to align, let's say, to the company level objectives, maybe it's department, or I need to align to a sister team because we have work that we're going to do to achieve a common goal. Great. But you also are able to see alignment over time. So in this instance, we can say we have, and here's where the color coding matters. We have, let's say, the 3-year enterprise strategy and annual 2020 session, and then the Q4. As I click on these fun little boxes, I can start to see how they may or may not relate to each other. And so it makes it super straightforward to be able to negotiate. Oh, this is supporting, let's say, the annual session. All of these are the things that we're going to do in Q4, or these are things that we want to do in Q3. And so you're able to contextualize alignment in multiple dimensions, which we think is super valuable. Now, as we hone into this, we're going to look at Q4 specifically. So I'm going to start to toggle off some of this stuff. Alignment also can exist, let's say, in terms of key results being rolled up or calculated together. So imagine I am an HR lead. We have hiring targets that we need to achieve across all of these different lines of business. How would I create alignment so that if individual recruiters have specific targets they need to hit, you can do what is called key result linking in Gtmhub. So let's say this team needs to hire 10, this other team needs to hire 30 software engineers. Top line, we need 40 people to join our organization at the end of the year. You can do that. This is very common also with sales teams. If there are sales quotas or things that are cross geographies, you're able to see that linkage. But also, as people downstream are updating their key results, your key result gets updated. And so there's no duplication of effort there. And that makes it really great. Another thing that seems to be very problematic when you're trying to align is like, where do you actually align? And we made that really easy in Gtmhub, where you can simply get a shareable URL. It's going to be copied to your clipboard. And then once that person, let's say, receives that information, you can send them the link, then they can paste it, and then they will navigate to the exact area. As you can see here, this is a specific OKR somebody wanted you to align to, and you don't have to weed through everything. Someone can help you figure out where you need to align to. And then from there, you would just add a sub-objective. And so sub-objectives are really easy to enter in. So like if you have in your mind what it exactly you want to be able to do, let's say we want to make sure that our product is the most important tool in a business. Great. I can select an owner. I can align it. In this case, it already is. What you see here also is that I have a series of custom fields. I have those selected. I'm going to hit create and I'm good to go. So I've created my objective. Now what? I need to set my key results. The way you can set up key results in Gtmhub is pretty straightforward. There are two kinds of key results. In the sense that I can have an objective, and then my objective is progress is calculated by child or sub-objectives that are progressing. So that's one way. And so as I create those sub-objectives, when that progress happens, this objective gets impacted. And the other, which is more common, is I have an objective, it'll be standalone, and I can add a series of key results. And so when you set a key results, you would just enter a title, and you would give it some sort of key result type. We think that key results should be quantitative in nature. And so there are 5 different types of key results you can set. The first being, I need something to go from X and increase to Y. I need it to decrease. So I need it to go from, B down to A. I need it to stay above some certain threshold or below some certain threshold, or the least favorite for most OKR consultants, experts is achieved or not, which tend to be more activity-based in nature. But you can set them in Gtmhub if you want, which means that once you create this, we'll do this for test purposes. So let's say that it was to ship, feature X, which we don't recommend. But let's say you do that. You can create the key result. And then you have now an objective and a set of key results associated with that. Something that's very unique to Gtmhub is for everybody in the system, because we know that the methodology has specific rules. And for example, you want the objective to be pretty succinct so people can remember it. You want to create between maybe 2, maybe a maximum of 5 key results for any given objective. You want to reduce the number of activity-based key results, so these Boolean types. And you want to also be able to add, some tasks, or be able to demonstrate what initiatives or work you're going to actually do to hopefully achieve those outcomes. And if you fulfill all that criteria, then you'll get a perfect score. And so we're following best practices and are able to demonstrate, as people are creating their OKRs, how do they know what the basic structure should be? We provide that out the box with Gtmhub, which we think is great. So another thing that is useful is, let's say I need to add a task. So I need to maybe set up a Jira project, for feature whatever, why, or like maybe not a project, but things in Jira for this. I could do that. And so you're able to start creating tasks and be thinking about what activity I'm going to do in order to serve up this objective and achieve those outcomes. You're also able to comment, which is really useful when you want to negotiate or talk about your OKRs. So in a nutshell, we're able to see a global and a very local view of alignment and be able to align very quickly to the extent where if something's out of place and you know it, you can say, oh, this actually belongs over here. You're able to also drag and drop objectives and key results within Gtmhub pretty quickly. So there are different ways to attack the same thing, and we make it super easy for you to be able to align and create alignment with other people in your organization and make that super clear. So sessions in a nutshell, we've created an objective and key result. Now what? So let's say you've created your objectives and key results. You've turned on an approval workflow. What does that look like? Well, if I go to, let's say, this demo session, I see a column for status. And what this basically means is the approval workflow is on. This particular OKR, let's say, is in draft. I would select someone to be able to review. So let's say Harry is going to review my OKR. I can select that user and I can send this for approval and it will be in review and that individual will be notified of this. Let's say, I'm Harry, but in this case, I'm not, I'm Jenny. I have OKRs for approval as well. You're able to see like a section where you can say, oh, like this is the status of the OKRs that I have in approval. If I need to be able to approve, this is where you would also go. So we make it really easy for everyone to know exactly what they need to do in the system. So now that we've aligned our OKRs, we've set them up for success because we've met the criteria from the OKR design score, and we've also submitted it through an approval workflow to get that human touch. Now what? You need to update. The way to do that is to go to Home. Home is where you'll figure out what you need to actually do. If there are OKRs that you actually own, or perhaps there are ones that are associated with your team, and the overall progress so that you have that full transparency of how you're performing, how your teams are performing, and how the organizations are performing, depending on your permission set. You're able to see that all here. And so if someone, for example, is an owner of key results, as I am in this instance, I can click on update key result progress. And remember, this was a Boolean one. So let's say I did ship it. Great. I can say yes. I can say we shipped it team. I can mention people at product, or let's go with Ryan in this instance because he's on my team. Ryan, we did it. Great. They will be notified of the change when I do it. And then we had some custom fields. I'm going to kind of ignore that because we'll touch on that in a bit. But now I've updated my key result. I don't have to think about it anymore. I can go down the line. Same with completing tasks. I can do that as well. Or I can look at different reports if I want associated with that. But your home screen is basically everything you would need to know because you have a slice of interest in those things, either because you own it or because your team does. We do have that lightweight task functionality like I showed you. You can attach, as you saw, we call this attaching in GTmHub, an objective and task together so that you can create that linkage of here's work that's going to help me get this objective achieved. So you can create them here. You can view them as a list or as a Kanban board. And then as you update, everything will show that, and you won't have to, let's say in home, ever update it again because you're done. It won't show you anymore. So that is tasks. It has, basic stuff, title, owner. If you want to add a description, attach it to an OKR or give it a due date, you can do that from your task view or wherever you create tasks in the system. Another thing we get asked a lot was, what about reporting? What kind of reporting functionality does GTmHub have? We have a few. We'll talk about kind of the lightest weight version of reporting, which we call lists. So here in the sidebar or the left nav, we have all lists, and they can be anything. Like basically imagine like the GTmHub data source is something that you can take full advantage of. And so let's say you want to create lists of company OKRs and share that with the organization. You can. There's a set of filters you can filter by. So we talked about sessions. What sessions do I want to look at? What owners? I want to look at key results. Can I get more filters? The answer is yes, and you can filter it by whatever you want. Lists can also contain, with that GTmHub data, you can say, okay, I want to not include the initial or the actual number or the target values. Maybe we're going to move our objectives somewhere else right behind title. Maybe I want to sort this based on progress that's descending. And then I want to also figure out when the last updated date was also, or maybe it's ascending order. Great. And then I can save it. And so you're able to look at all of that GTmHub data and whatever slice of that you need to understand for your basic reporting, you can. You can also, again, give different permissions for that. So it could be that you want this to be a list that only you can see, is restricted to a certain group of individuals, or something that everyone can access, or something that everyone can edit. And you have the option to be able to do that really easily in GTmHub. And if you want it to be a part of your sidebar, no problem. You can just toggle here and it'll show up in the left nav for easy access. And I find that this is so useful as an OKR champion in my organization. Let's say we're trying to comb through all of the key results that have zero progress and we want to know what's up. We can create lists for that. Similarly, if you're trying to facilitate a team meeting, like how do you do that with your OKRs and you want specific information in there? Let's say I'm part of the customer success team. I can do that. And then I can, again, like configure my report so that when we're having our OKR conversations as part of our regular stand up, whenever that is going to happen, we can pull this up, talk through it, update it if we need to, add notes, and then make sure that that is constantly, framed in a way that everyone can expect. And we become ritualized in a way. Another thing that's really great about lists is if you want to use it for a reporting tool, you can export a list and that will create an Excel export. And then you can open this up in Excel or whatever tool that you might have, create whatever visualizations that you want from that point. So lists in a nutshell provide the ability to create really quick reporting for pretty much anything you can think of. Some common themes are objectives that were achieved, team OKR meeting related lists. As you saw, key results with zero progress, company level objectives that you want to share with everyone. Sky's the limit. The other two kind of reports that we have out of the box, turnkey, is a performance report that helps you to understand the overall performance in an aggregate level of OKR specific to sessions or teams. And then similarly, you can have a process report, which helps you understand how are we doing overall in terms of our OKR process. So as an example, you can see based on the saturation of green, like how many updates are being made. So you can see kind of a general trend of update activity. Perhaps you are really focusing on trying to get more automated key results. Automated key results are exactly what they sound like, key results that are being automatically updated from some third-party source that you might have hooked up in a GTmHub. Maybe you're interested in people who are not owning things, but maybe should, or issues with objectives without key results or objectives with too few key results based on our definition set earlier. How are we doing with process? What's cool about this is if you want to make this even an automatic, automatically updated key result, you would just hover over any of the numbers and then you can add it as a key result or as even as a KPI, which we're going to showcase in a little bit. So reporting functionality, awesome lists, and the ability to see these reports. Where it gets really exciting, I think, with Gtmhub is data sources. We have like over 160 different connectors. We like to be very data forward because we think in order to produce really good key results, you should be looking at data to inform what you should measure. And then hopefully you can make that automatic. So updating key results is a breeze. You don't want to overly tax your team with yet another thing for them to report on. Some things that we have even hooked up into this account, like task management tools like Asana. Maybe you have NPS tracking from Delighted. We do spreadsheets, Google Analytics, pretty much Salesforce, Jira. There's a bunch. So we're going to actually jump into Jira and our integration with Jira real quick. So as an example here, I'm looking at our roadmap for this engineering team. And I'm looking at ETNA-61. This is the particular issue that I'm looking at. We have a bidirectional sync with Jira, which is nice. So once you hook it up, you can see that linked objective. In this case, onboarding is helping us get to our growth opportunities that we want to be able to identify. I can click on this, get redirected back into Gtmhub, and then understand, oh, the reason why we're doing this thing is in support of this overall outcome. So that's super nice. And even in Gtmhub, you're able to see, oh, these come from Jira. You even see the differentiation in the iconography. So this is Jira's icon versus Gtmhub, which is that yellow box. But if I need to and I want to, I can click back and then be redirected back into Jira's platform and do whatever I need to do there. So that bidirectional sync is super easy. I can show you real quick how to do that. So let's say I'm going back to the roadmap and I'm looking at any particular epic. We're going to look at page loading and arrow handling. All you need to do is scroll to the bottom. Well, actually, this one's already hooked up. I think we have probably a bunch of those in this account. My bad. This one's not linked. I can say click here, and then I can navigate through my sessions. Let's say I want to hook this up to the Q4 2020 session. I can filter for what I want, or I can say, okay, this belongs to this, and then boom, done. Bugless product is now hooked up into something in Gtmhub, so I can see the interrelationship between the work that we're performing and then how that relates to our overall goals. The other thing about being able to hook up your data sources in Gtmhub is that they can power your KPIs. So a lot of people ask us, hey, Gtmhub, what do you do when you're in a scenario where you're doing something net new? You don't have benchmarks for it, but you know you probably should set goals around it. I'm like, why don't you track or measure what it is that you want to be able to baseline off of first? And you could do that via KPIs very easily. And all of these little kind of link looking things means it's being driven by a third-party data source. And so you're able to monitor that KPI. And then once you're comfortable, you promote that because now you have like a baseline. You're like, we can improve this. And then you would make it into a key result. Vice versa is once you've achieved that key result and you're satisfied, but you still think it's important for us to monitor, you can still maintain it as a KPI. And it's not downgraded or anything. It's just you completed your goal and that's cool. And so you're able to see the history of your KPIs here. You can also have them manually updated. So let's say, for example, and I don't know why you do this, but let's say you want to keep track manually of your monthly active users and we've increased to 1669. Awesome. I can enter that manually. And then you're able to see what the delta is in terms of nominal value as well as percentages. And then you're able to group them if you want. All of these are related to the company. There are some ungrouped ones. So for example, if these are engineering related KPIs, you can have a section for that. If they're company, fine. We make it easy for you to be able to create these grouping and then assign alignment of these KPI notions to those particular categorizations. The other thing you can do when you connect all of your data sources, you can create amazing reporting. As an example, executive reporting, which we get asked about a lot. So I'm an executive. How can I make sense of all of the Gtmhub information that you have in the system? What's wonderful is that, let's say you're thinking at the strategic, tactical, operational level, you can have all that stuff grouped together, if you will. So in this case, this person might have 4 core metrics that they're looking at and they really care about: active sessions, uptime, average page load time, and maybe the weekly velocity of the team. But I also want to know tactically how we're doing in terms of, ship and epics. Great. I can pull that data from Jira if I want. I can also get Gtmhub information. So I can see, for example, an OKRs view of here is the different objectives, here's the progress the teams are making, here are all the tasks that they're working on and the statuses of that. I can also get that data. And something that we actually have in customer accounts now, which we think is super valuable, is you can see OKR progress by team. You can see, oh, these teams are performing as expected given where we are right now in terms of the cycle. Some of these teams are overperforming, yay, and some of them might be underperforming. We need to check that out. Similarly, we know as part of OKR methodology, when you update a key result, you would say, here's the value change. Maybe you give some narrative as to why that's happening, and you would update your confidence level. As your teams are updating their confidence level to signal, we think we're going to make it or we're not, you can also aggregate that information in a really nice visual like we have here to say, here are all the different teams we have. Here are the teams that say that they are at risk, teams that are on track, teams that have not defined confidence levels. So we should shore up maybe some of our communication around expectations when we're updating OKRs. And so in a really, really nice view, you're able to contextualize a lot of information at the executive level. And this could be catered, let's say, for any particular function or head of function. We have this at Gtmhub. The other thing you can do, and not everyone's in Jira, right? And you're wondering to yourself, how do we express maybe what people want to know, which is, when are things going to land? You can create an insight like this, a simple widget that says, here's what's done, here's what's not done. And you can present roadmap information that's coming from Jira to inform, let's say, a sales organization that likely will not take part in that because it's complicated for them and they don't need it, but they want to know. You're able to do that in Gtmhub and provide that contextual information if you want. We also have customers that have these roadmaps built in and they show the OKRs that are associated with them together so they can see that linkage. And then a last kind of insight board I'll show is, let's say, a retrospective one. At the end of the quarter, maybe you're trying to compare how you did between Q2 and Q3, even though we're now in Q4. What was our progress? How many teams have participated? How were we performing? And so you're able to take that data again, visualize it in these nice little widgets and understand how you're progressing over time at an aggregate level or even a team level if you want to break it down to that level of granularity. Lots of reporting power in Gtmhub, highly configurable. We're very data forward, obviously. We also think it's important to be able to announce things at scale, especially related to your OKR process. So we built an announcements module. And so let's say, for example, you're new to this and you want to refresh the rest of the organization on best practices of OKRs. Your OKR champion or whoever is responsible for this in your organization can draft up an announcement. And when they create it, they can inform whoever they want. It could be company-wide or specific individuals. It could be managers on the team or whatever. And then people can react. They can comment again to these particular announcements. Another thing that we think is really great is how do you then handle the recognition portion of OKRs as people are making progress? You can assign badges, and that's really easy to do. So we can go to the badges module, and when I create a badge, which I will get to in a second.
Jenny, one question that we have
Sure.
in the chat is Gtmhub's linkages to version 1.
Is Gtmhub's linkages to version 1 of?
Oh, version 1, the product software platform. I guess now is version 1 CollabNet. Now it's CollabNet. Now it's digital.ai, I believe, if I have that sequence right.
Still not tracking with the question. Sorry.
Yeah, version 1 was original competitor to Rally, and I think
that's right. Yeah,
that version 1 ONE,
yeah.
not version 1 number.
Okay, sorry.
Sorry.
So the question was, do we have an integration point with them, or?
Correct. Yep.
Not presently, but we are looking into that because we have gotten requests for this. Right now we have integrations with Jira, but version 1 was something that has come up in the last quarter. So we're evaluating our integration plan for that. So not yet. But probably most everything else that you can think of. Good question, though. Badges. Okay, so something that you can do in Gtmhub is you can install badges from a gallery of things that we've already like predefined, or you can create a new badge. And then as people are making progress and people feel free to do so, they can award badges very simply. Click on award badge, select which one, who should receive it, some sort of comment, notify the people you want, award the badge. And if you have approval rights, it'll automatically happen. Else, there would be an approval badges area where a manager, for example, would review all of the awarded badges and can approve from there. And that all, again, will show up in the announcements thread. And if you so choose, it could be, it can notify people via email or in-app, which is what we have right now. You're able to construct teams pretty readily once you have everyone in the system. What we think is super powerful is we don't constrain that to the organizational hierarchy. So if you have cross-functional teams, or maybe you have composite teams that you're creating that are amorphous in nature, they have something that they need to achieve by some time, and then you want to be able to retire or archive that team, you can do so very easily in Gtmhub. We give the ability to also bulk edit. So for example, if a new person is joined in the EMEA team, great, we'll add Bo, and you can just drag and drop, and then that team has been formed. So there are different visualizations to be able to tackle that issue. At scale, people are probably wondering, what about being able to get everyone in? We do have the ability to draw information from HRIS systems, or if you have like Azure Active Directory and the like, we can map to your organizational structure from there, and then you can organize your teams as you wish once everyone's bulk loaded into the system. So that's teams in a nutshell and how the organization would flow. And this is, by the way, how you would construct ownership when you create stuff, is as you develop individuals or teams in the system, if you've built out a team, it has a name, that team can be assigned an OKR and Gtmhub. Pretty straightforward, I hope.
A couple of other quick questions that just popped up.
Yeah.
One, they love the badges. Can they be printed out and displayed on Scrum and Kanban boards? I'm thinking probably yes.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, of course you can if you'd like.
Okay.
I love badges too. Something that's super fun is in the home screen. If you do get awarded a badge, unfortunately in this account I have not, the badges would also show up next to your home page so that you can see and kind of collect them. And I think it's kind of fun to be able to see how many you can collect over time.
This next one is a bit of a long one.
Yes.
We have a person that's walked the CEO and CRO through Gtmhub's platform. Great.
Fantastic.
The question relates specifically to data sources, namely SFDC connector. He was less excited given he's confident he has everything he needs and more with SFDC, but I believe he's missing the bigger picture as relates to OKRs. Do you have an example of OKRs with the SFDC data source? Is the ultimate question.
I think SFDC is the Salesforce data connector, right? I think that's true. Yeah, so if I go to the data sources here, I think we do have Salesforce hooked up into this account, which we do. That's good. So let me look at some inside boards that are related to that. Probably the sales one would make sense. Yeah, here we go. Here's some activities in Salesforce. And right now, all of it is showing goose eggs, which is so sad. And I need to talk to our team about this. Let me see what's up real quick. So it should be pulling from Salesforce, but it's not for some reason. So the long-winded question is uh, SFDC, which is Salesforce Data Connector, and then is it that they're having a difficult time trying to showcase how to make this connector work?
I believe the question is, he believes he's getting everything from the Salesforce Data Connector, and so why would he need OKRs on top of it? And I think they're missing out on the larger picture of how those two relate.
Okay. So Larry, I think this might be more of a philosophy question, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I agree with you, Jenny. So Eric, I did take a look at your question. What I would encourage you to think about is when we put a platform in front of a stakeholder that we're trying to convert to potentially becoming a sponsor of the adoption of OKRs, which is what you're describing, it's important to first connect with them with what's the why and what's the problem that we're trying to solve in our organization by getting to by adopting OKRs. Because the platform is an enabler that provides all of the feature set that Jenny's highlighted for us, but it doesn't necessarily connect with, you know, a CFO or CRO in terms of, well, why do we need them to begin with? And so that's where you need to look at OKRs from a, how does it help with alignment? How does it help to get a crisp, clear understanding of our strategy, near term and long term? And how does it help the organization become more outcomes focused? Those are the things you really want to position with your leaders to get them on board. And then comes the platform.
Hopefully that helps. So moving on to kind of the next theme, we're almost done. Gtmhub is super powerful, which is why it's great. And it can be overwhelming, but we try to make it super easy to kind of configure and make it easy to approach. Something that we thought was super helpful for enterprises or organizations of any sizable amount is, how do you take the mundane, painful, repetitive tasks and automate that out? So as an example, if you want to be informed of achieved objectives, you can set up an automation that would inform you, let's say via email, or if you are integrated with Slack, it would push it into a channel. So that's a way for you to be able to see things as it happens. We actually have that hooked up into our internal account. So as people are achieving their goals, it gets pushed to an OKRs channel, and then everyone can react if they want. Similarly, if, let's say, you're having issues making sure that everyone is creating the appropriate number of OKRs because you have a threshold that everyone should create at least a minimum of 2, you can set up an automation to say, hey, create more OKRs. Or if they're unaligned, you can set up an automation to say, hey, please align your OKR because it doesn't have a parent, and you want to create a task for all those individuals. You don't have to create a task for every single one of them manually. You can create that with an automation. The way this works is really straightforward. It's using the trigger condition action paradigm. So if some event happens, either scheduled or something happens in the system, and if you've satisfied a set of conditions, which you can define, Gtmhub will take some action on your behalf. So this is a way to be able to scale your OKRs process very easily so that you're able to manage it and stay on top of the stuff that needs to get done, but is probably really mundane and remedial. The other things I'd like to share, Gtmhub Marketplace. It's our library, if you will, of different OKRs. If you don't know where to start and you need to jumpstart your process, we have a library of OKRs that you can select, you can filter by, and we can install into our account. So that would just be a click of a button. I can show those selected OKRs and I can install them into any given session that I want. And then those would be owned by me. And then I can edit them as I would and adjust those if I want. So that's a way to jumpstart it. Similarly, if you're trying to get on the data train, which we encourage everyone to do, and you want to create those insight boards with those widgets like you saw, you're able to go to the Marketplace Insight section, similarly install an insight, hook up the data connection, and then your insight is born. So we make it super easy to approach it, to get started with OKRs or trying to be data fluent. The other thing I wanted to touch on, which is more engagement related, I guess, is the KR timeline. This is an experiment which will likely promote to be a first-class citizen. As people are making updates in the system, which we showed earlier, simple entry points, what has changed, give a narrative, update your confidence level, inform who you want, update. They would show up in this key result timeline, so long as they're not private. And so here is another avenue for people to connect with their key results, see what other people are up to, because we tend to be nosy beings. Internally, we do this. We're like, good job, team. We can provide, encouragement for people who are actually killing it, which I think is great. And we have a very robust way to configure your entire account, which I'll end here. So as an example, if you want to change your account settings for everyone in German, Spanish, simplified Chinese, Bulgarian, we have that. We're adding stuff all the time. You can restrict who you want as owners for things. So as an example, you want team only objectives or key results. You can make that setting in Gtmhub, and then you restrict team creation only for objectives or key results or both. We also provide a means to be able to adjust your report settings or how often you're going to be notified and in what channels you want, whether it's your inbox for different things, whether it's key result updates or if someone made edits or if you received a badge, you can configure your notifications. And then the frequency in which you receive reports from the system, you can also configure that. And then something that I think is super unique to us, besides like being able to have confidence level, is you can adjust these. So if you want them to be numeric in nature, great. If you want them to be text and then you want to change what they are, if you want emojis, go for it. We have some companies that decided to do that. You're able to do that very easily. And then even fine tune the granularity of those confidence level changes. So if you want a 3, selector or a 5 or 7, go for it. You can. And even the way that you report. So if you want it to be from 0 to 1 value with step 0.1 or 0 to 10 with step 1 as the increment, you can adjust that with a simple toggle. You can even limit the number of objectives per user key results. So if they try to breach that threshold, the system will tell them you have created enough, refocus basically, and think about what it is that you want to focus on, because we're doing like a maximum of 3 per team or something like that. So you're able to, at the very top level, when you set up the account, create that structure. Something that you would see in some other places where some organizations just have different ways that they want to contextualize the data that are associated with their OKRs. You can do this at the objective level, key result update, team, and individual level. So if you have custom fields, one that we saw used and we promoted was like when COVID happened and teams needed to swap strategy really quickly, we created for a lot of them a custom field at the objective level for COVID. And they had like a drop down that said, delayed, postponed, continue this. And so they were able to say, okay, all of the OKRs that were listed as continued, we're going to clone that, push into a new session, and then people can pivot from there. And it made it super quick when they needed to make strategic decisions and then express that strategy very quickly in Gtmhub. They were able to do it like real quick. And we thought that was amazing that they did that. You saw in the insight boards that there are different parameters that you can filter by. So you would create those via insight board parameters. We briefly touched on how to get everyone in the system. We provide the ability to hook up with whatever single sign-on you want, whether it's G Suite or Microsoft, which are usually the common cases. So that is possible. We have a Slack integration, which I'll briefly show here. So if you want to hook it up, you can get notifications like, hey, it's time for you to update your OKR. You can have that pushed to somebody. Or if that's something they want to proactively do, they can say Gtmhub OKRs. You can see your stuff, and then you can update your OKRs from here. And you're off and running. So we try to make it really easy for people to not have to leave what they need to. They're probably in all day. Same thing with MS Teams. So via an iframe, you can actually have the whole Gtmhub website and you can have that full experience if you want in Gtmhub. But similar to Slack, you can do simple /Gtmhub OKRs commands and update what you need to update and get going. So that's our integration points
A
with
two-part
communication.
question.
Yeah.
Yeah. Two-part question. With all the talk of artificial intelligence, will this platform over time adopt any advanced workflow that will provide predictive analytics?
Yes.
Question number one. That was
the
easy.
answer is yes. Actually, that's part of our internally, like when we talk mission, vision, strategy, we talk a lot about the power of OKRs and predictive analytics to enable organizations to understand and be aware of things that they weren't before that data can provide for them. So absolutely.
Second question. If companies are in a partnership but separate entities, could they theoretically share an OKR session?
Absolutely. We have instances where you can be multi-tenanted and you can give access to whatever it is that you need to give access to. We have like conglomerate companies that might have particular verticals or sister businesses, and that's actually happening. So we're able to configure that.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. Something that we sometimes get asked is, what about Tableau? Because maybe you have a dashboarding tool or you need to draw data out or you want to even push data into the system. We have an API. Just generate a token. Our API documentation is available for anybody to review. Like recently I was asked, hey, what if our engineering team wants to push information into Gtmhub because we want to automate, but I mean, we saw what you can do. We want to do it this way. How can we do that? We were like, here's our API documentation. That's not our preferred way. That's like a secondary option, but it's totally possible to be able to pull and push data into the system as you want. Other things, simple stuff. If you want to brand your account, you can. If you want to update your billing, there's a billing portal for that. And then when you create an account for the first time, you will be given a URL or a domain that probably says account somenumbers.com or at gtmhub.com. If you want it to have, you want to have a specific account name and domain and you want to change that, you're able to do so here in account name and domain. So if you have your company, you can make sure to have that URL secured for your organization. So that was a lot. I know we have about 10 minutes left. Are there any more questions? I think I went through like the full breadth of Gtmhub, or at least a good majority of it.
We've got nothing on the Q&A or chat. Maybe in the last few minutes, Larry, maybe if you could put up your either the roadmap or the cycle, and people talk about, you can talk at a high level, kind of, you know, what folks need to think about in an organization as they go down this journey.
Oh, I'll stop sharing so you can do that.
Let's do that. I'll share my screen. Just a couple of things for particularly if you're new to OKRs. So as Jenny was going through her discussion, you know, she was talking about scoring, she was talking about meetings, she was talking about linking and connecting and all kinds of different ideas that go along with OKRs. Part of what she's describing there is something called an OKR cycle. And so it's important to understand, if you're familiar with Agile or Scrum, this will make sense to you, which is when you adopt something like OKRs, there's behavioral changes we're looking to start to see evidence of in the organization. There's new routines and new patterns we're trying to establish to help us to focus and move toward these objectives and these key results or these outcomes we're trying to get into. Jenny mentioned tasks and things of that nature. All of those are part of this, you know, this new way of working that OKRs helps to enable. The reason that's important is because if we just think of the pure mechanics of objectives and the pure mechanics of key results and those high level rules of like no more than 2 to 3 objectives with 3 to 4 key results and that they should be measurable. If that's as deep as we go, then you know there's some patterns that we see where, you know, the OKRs and the actual work we're doing will start to drift, and you know and so one point to what Dalen brought up here is, you know, keep in mind that there is a cycle that we're trying to get into. We also want to keep in mind that when we're creating our OKRs, the concept we share with this cycle is the idea of co-creation and localization. Co-creation is when you're working with other departments and other teams and other groups to start to understand that relationship and that alignment across teams as it relates to how do we share partial contributions to larger objectives we're trying to accomplish. And then localization is making it a team effort, making sure that we work on our OKRs as an entire team. It's not a situation where Jenny's the lead on our team, therefore she creates our OKRs and we just kind of fall in line. We really want everybody to contribute to them. That's what makes it real. If you're launching OKRs in your organization for the first time, have a plan. Understand the big picture behind what it is we're trying to install, because OKRs are going to be as impactful for your organization as the approach that you take for making it a meaningful contribution in your organization in terms of how it affects your organization. Consider the training that folks need. Consider how you're going to cast a vision in terms of how we're going to what OKRs mean for our organization. Have champions, have coaches that know OKRs really well and can support the teams. Pilot it in an area. These are kind of those just change management 101 best practices that we want to get into. So just a couple things to be thinking about. When you do have relationships between OKRs, handle that very carefully, because the key word that we want to use is influence, right? When you have a higher level objective or key result, we don't want the key result to become the objective for the next level down, meaning like where it's almost hard coded. We want it to create a view of like, what are the outcomes we're trying to accomplish? And then each level looks up and they ask, how can we influence that? What can we do? If we're trying to hire 40 people, well, we think we can hire 7 of those 40 people, as an example that we saw during the demo. And so we're looking for influence that helps to establish that relationship, not a hard tie, if you will. So a couple things to think about.
Well, we've got 5 minutes left if anybody would like to throw out any more questions. Going one, going to one. Well, we can give you 3 minutes of your lives back if you like. I would like to thank Jenny and Larry. Thank you so much, guys, for giving your time today and giving the overview. Everybody on the call today, you will be receiving a recording of the call that you can share with leadership. If you're more interested in, let me back up. If you're interested in learning more about the Gtmhub platform or a demo for your internal organization, we can certainly help facilitate that. Or if you'd like to help, as we had a question earlier on messaging, on how to get to that tipping point and how to create messages that get your leadership to start thinking in this way, we can help along those paths as well. So thank you everyone for attending today, and have a great Wednesday.
Thanks everyone.
Thanks everyone. Ciao.